The movie starts early in the morning. Seth wakes up to face another boring day. He has no friends or family. His only company is the dogs at the animal control center where he works. After feeding them, he goes into the cage with one of the dogs, Lexi, and hugs her to feel some comfort. One evening, Seth takes the bus home and is surprised to see a woman named Holly. He goes up to say hello, but she doesn't recognize him. He explains that they went to the same high school. They never talked back then. Seth was a year older and only knew her because she was popular. He sees her writing in a notebook and calls her a writer. Holly says she's actually a waitress, and that writing is just a hobby. Seth tries to make a joke, but it's awkward. Soon, Holly gets off the bus. Seth tries to ask her out, but she doesn't hear him. That night, Seth looks her up on social media and is happy to see that she has a dog. The next day, he asks his coworker Nate how to talk to girls. Nate tells him to be confident and funny. Later, Seth is heartbroken when he finds out that Lexi has to be put down. He takes her out of her cage and holds her gently on the table. The vet tells him he can adopt her, but Seth says he can't. He lives in a place that doesn't allow pets and can't afford to move. Lexi dies after the injection, and Seth takes her body to be cremated. As he removes Lexi's name tag from her cage, Seth hears a strange noise coming from the restricted area. He opens the door to check, but sees nothing unusual. After work, Seth continues to stalk Holly online, taking notes on everything he learns about her. He analyzes each picture and eventually figures out where she works. The next day, he visits the diner where Holly is working and has to reintroduce himself because she doesn't remember him. He compliments her hair, but she remains strictly professional and simply brings him his food. Moments later, Seth asks her out. Holly turns him down, saying she has a boyfriend. Seth immediately replies, "No, you don't," which creeps her out. She leaves the bill on the table and walks away. That night, as Holly heads home, she senses someone is following her. It turns out Seth is outside her house, hiding in the bushes. Holly tells her roommate, Claire, that someone is outside, but Claire thinks she's just being paranoid. Then, Holly gets a call from her ex-boyfriend, Eric, who is extremely drunk. After she hangs up, Claire tells her she should forgive Eric because being alone sucks. Holly refuses and drinks instead. The following morning, Holly arrives at the diner and finds a huge bouquet of flowers with a card that simply says, "Be mine." After work, Holly visits Eric at his bar and asks him not to send her gifts, but he insists he wasn't the one who sent them. He tries to convince her to get back together, but Holly reminds him he cheated on her. Soon, Seth enters the bar and watches from a distance. When Holly steps outside to smoke and write in her notebook, Seth follows her and tries to chat. Holly still doesn't recognize him and announces that she's leaving. Seth then admits he sent the flowers, and Holly finally remembers him, realizing he's been stalking her. A desperate Seth swears he isn't a psycho and just wants to talk, claiming he's never forgotten her since school. Holly tries to leave again, but Seth blocks her way, causing her to freak out. She pushes him away and runs back into the bar, where Eric notices that Seth is following her. After Holly explains that Seth tried to grab her, Eric jumps over the counter and punches Seth in the face. Although he's bleeding on the floor, Seth starts laughing, so Eric kicks him again. Holly has to stop him from doing more damage. Eric throws Seth out of the bar, telling him never to come back. As Seth lies on the floor, he notices that Holly dropped her notebook. Later at home, Seth tends to his wounds and begins reading the notebook. It turns out to be Holly's journal, where she vents about whatever she's feeling at the moment. Seth stays up all night reading every word, feeling connected to her inner anger. The next day at work, Seth sneaks into the restricted area and discovers a hatch in the floor. He goes down and finds an old abandoned room still connected to the power supply. This gives him an idea. Over the next few days, Seth follows a tutorial, orders supplies online, and builds a cage in the hidden room. He continues studying Holly's journal and steals medicine from the shelter's infirmary. At home, he tests the sedative and falls asleep instantly without side effects. A few nights later, as Holly walks home, she once again feels someone following her. She stops and looks around, but Seth is already hiding. She keeps walking and senses something again, so she uses pepper spray, accidentally spraying a homeless man instead. Panicking, she runs away while Seth watches from the shadows. He decides to follow the man, who is now screaming in pain. Moments later, Seth climbs a wall to enter Holly's apartment through the window. She's in the bathroom taking her medicine when she hears a noise. She rushes to the living room and finds the window open, so she closes it and goes to bed. Seth then jumps on her and injects her with the sedative. Holly struggles for a few seconds before passing out. Seth hides her in a box and takes her to the shelter. When Nate questions the delivery, Seth lies and says the boss called him to handle it. Nate believes him and has him sign in. Holly begins to wake up and makes a noise inside the box. Seth coughs to cover it up. When she makes another sound, Nate hears it, but assumes it's just the AC. Seth drops her off and leaves. Holly fully awakens alone inside the cage in the abandoned room. She freaks out and tries to escape, accidentally ripping off a nail. Grabbing the bars, she screams for help, but only the dogs can hear her, and Nate dismisses the barking as normal behavior. In the morning, Seth brings her a bedpan and speaks gently, but Holly insults him. Seth says she's lost her right to food and that they can try again tomorrow. He ignores her, screaming as he leaves. Once alone, she starts filing the bars using the chain from the lock. The next day, Seth finally gives her food and water. She desperately grabs his leg and begs him not to leave, but he says it's important to establish boundaries in their relationship, then leaves again after repeating that they'll try tomorrow. That night, Holly hallucinates Claire talking to her, describing all the terrible things Seth might do. Holly snaps and tells her to shut up. Eventually, she uses the bedpan and is startled when a rat approaches. She kicks it repeatedly until it dies. The next day, Seth finds the mess and cleans it up. Holly asks if he's going to take advantage of her. He says no, but when she asks if he'll kill her, he responds, "I hope not," which terrifies her. Seth explains he may not have a choice if he fails to save her. She assumes this is part of some religious cult, but Seth insists he's doing it for her, because she's special. He says he was lonely and lost before meeting her, and thought she truly saw him. However, he soon learns that the version of Holly she presents to others is a lie. He asks who the real Holly is because he wants to make sure there's still a chance to save her. If there isn't, then she'll never leave the room. Holly just insults him, so Seth leaves. On his way out of the restricted area, Seth is caught by Nate, who reminds him he shouldn't be snooping around there. Nate sends Seth to clean up before checking the door, but it's locked. That night, the Claire hallucination asks Holly what she's going to do, and Holly says she'll wait. The following morning, Seth shows Holly that he has her journal. He tells her he feels sorry for her, especially because she writes about love in such a depressing way. But Holly responds that a creepy stalker like him can't possibly know what love is either. Seth then asks about Claire, revealing he heard her talking to someone and doing two voices when he arrived. He asks if Claire is in the room, and Holly says no, but she claims she can see her behind Seth. She admits she knows Claire isn't really there. But Seth isn't just talking about this room. It turns out Holly has been hallucinating Claire at home too. As Seth goes through the events in the journal, the truth is revealed. Claire used to exist and lived with Holly around the time she got engaged to Eric. Eventually, Claire had an affair with Eric, which Holly discovered by reading his email. During a car ride, Holly confronted Claire, who apologized and said it didn't mean anything. Furious, Holly began speeding, driving like a maniac while ranting about the betrayal. She dodged a few cars, but ultimately lost control and crashed. Both women woke up covered in blood, and Holly found a glass shard in her stomach. When she heard Claire speak, Holly pulled out the shard and stabbed her in the eye to kill her. The police later believed Claire died in the crash. In the present, Holly says she's a fiction writer, and Seth admits that's why he had to make sure before going to the police. He's been following Holly for days and has learned that, since Claire's death, she's been killing random people on the streets in gruesome ways. It was she who set the homeless man on fire. Seth believes she keeps the journal because deep down she wants to get caught and punished for Claire's death, but he isn't there to punish her. He's there to save her. Holly agrees she wants to be saved. Right before the Claire hallucination appears, clapping at Holly's performance. Holly then admits she's lying to make Seth think he has a chance. The next time Seth visits Holly, he brings her some water and a cloth to clean herself, but he can't stop staring at her skin. They talk about her murders, and she claims to enjoy killing. Seth doesn't believe her, thinking she's acting out of guilt and trauma. Holly then tells a story about sharks banging their heads against the glass in aquariums, and imitates them, only stopping when he asks. She keeps taunting him, saying that if she dies, the cops will assume he did it. Disturbed, Seth leaves. Later, Seth is called into his boss's office and scolded for neglecting his duties. She doesn't fire him, but she adds a disciplinary notice to his record. One more strike, and he's gone. During his next visit, Seth brings Holly only 2 bars of chocolate, saying she must learn she's not in control. If she doesn't start behaving, he won't feed her at all. Holly tries to manipulate him by saying she's dreamed about the two of them living happily at the beach. Seth falls for it and agrees to bring her more food. When Seth leaves the restricted area to get snacks, Nate sees him again. Growing suspicious, Nate tries the door, and this time, it's unlocked. He goes down the hatch and is shocked to find Holly in a cage. She begs for help, and he starts banging the lock, trying to break it open. At that moment, Seth returns, and Holly silently signals him to attack. She distracts Nate while Seth sneaks behind and hits him in the head. Nate immediately pushes Seth against the wall, so Seth pulls out a knife and stabs him several times before fleeing. As Nate tries to pursue him, Holly stretches out her leg to trip him. Then she sweetly speaks to Seth, urging him to kill Nate. Seth smashes Nate's head with a cinder block, while Holly watches with pleasure. When it's over, Seth has a breakdown. Holly helps him stay calm and gives instructions on how to dispose of the body. Using the vet's tools, Seth removes Nate's teeth, fingerprints, and nails. Then he chops up the body and feeds it to the dogs. The leftovers are burned in the crematory. After showering, Seth calls his boss and says Nate left to run an errand and never returned. Sometime later, he throws the teeth into the river. When he returns to the shelter, he begins scrubbing the blood as Holly rambles in the background. She suggests that he's attracted to her dark side. She grabs his hand and nuzzles it, then tries to force it to touch her intimately. But Seth pulls away. When he goes back to the office, he finds a detective searching Nate's belongings for clues. Seth is interrogated about the last time he saw Nate, but his story is full of holes. The detective also finds it suspicious that Seth keeps referring to Nate in the past tense. The next day, Seth moves carefully around the shelter because the detective is still looking into Nate's disappearance. He brings food to Holly, but she just sits there quietly and won't talk. After begging her for several days, she finally agrees to speak. She tells Seth to cut off his finger to prove that he loves her. At first, Seth says no, but then Holly starts talking again, saying she's always felt different from everyone else and that only Seth understands her. Feeling overwhelmed, Seth runs to the bathroom and has a panic attack. After thinking for a while, he goes back to Holly. She promises to behave if he does what she asked. Seth sits beside the cage and cuts off his own finger, crying in pain. Holly acts like she's going to take the finger, but instead, she grabs the knife and threatens to kill herself unless he opens the cage. Seth unlocks the door and Holly slowly steps out. She pushes him against the wall, says she loves him, and then slits his throat with the knife. The Claire hallucination appears again, pointing to the open door. Sometime later, Holly is dating Eric again. She also gets a book deal to publish her journal as a fiction novel. One day, Eric's phone rings. Holly checks it and sees that he's cheating again. Strangely, she stays calm and gives him the phone without saying a word. After that, Holly goes to an old warehouse. Inside, Seth is locked in a cage. Now, whenever she feels the urge to kill someone, she hurts him instead. So in a twisted way, he really did save her. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next video.